Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. What an amazingly special, fascinating, interesting show today with Mustafa Ammar. And it's funny, you go through the universe and you're always looking, I always look for particulates of commonality and synchronicity and kind of bonding. So when the universe brought Mustafa and I together, there were some powerful elements of synchronicity, like meant to be. We're meant to be. And first is Mustafa was a trained pharmacist in Egypt. I was a trained pharmacist in New Jersey. That's powerful. So that's next. What's so fascinating to me, really spiritual, as I wrote my first novel, which helped propel me to propel me into a different career, which is what Mustafa does. But I had two characters in my first novel. One is a New Jersey guy, and one is from Egypt. Extraordinary. Extraordinary. And then the third element, and this is why everybody out there listening, you need to listen to Mustafa talk about time to move on, talk about changing careers. I just told Mustafa I want to be a poster boy for his message, his coaching, his writing, his Passion MBA, to get people to change careers, to become happy, because it's so critical. I wish I would have known you, Mustafa, 20 or 25 years ago. I wasted 20, 25 years wanting to change. There were things inside me, I couldn't get it out. If I would have known you 20, 25 years ago and you were doing this, you could have saved me decades of my life, so I could have been more productive. So this is so key and so important. By the way, you could be Gen Z, you could, doesn't make a difference what age, because all of this is relevant. And I speak with a little bit of authority because 3 years ago I taught career explorations at Rutgers University, and I didn't even know you then. So this is truly one of the most important interviews that I've ever done. And I've been doing this for a long time. So my monologue is officially concluded. And I want to introduce Mustafa Ammar and maybe a little bit of a bio. And we're going to jump into some amazing things you've done. By the way, one other thing. There's a script here. There's a movie here of your life. No, I'm serious. No, it really is. It's so fascinating, and we'll get to it. So anyway, take it away.
Hi, Calvin. Thank you so much for having me on your show. This is so far the most interesting, most unique introduction I've been, introduced in. Thank you so much. Thank you for your generosity. I enjoyed so much our, preparatory work, before having today's conversation, and I'm very, very excited about it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Perfect. By the way, when we chatted last week, I take notes on everything. That's because I went to pharmacy school. I take notes on everything. But it was a great quote you quoted. You quoted Clive Davis, and the best achievement in life is to love your work.
Yeah.
Wow. And what's also synchronistic is a few days before you and I chatted, and you told me about that, I actually watched a bio, I swear, on Clive Davis's life. It had nothing to do with you. I watched a bio of his life. You don't realize, I mean, he was a lawyer and became the most amazing music impresario. But anyway, so let's jump in. We've got lots to cover. So talk a little bit about your pharmacy career. You went to the pharmacy school in Cairo. Talk a little bit about that.
Thanks, Calvin. Yeah, I mean, normally at the age of 16, you really have to decide what kind of specialization you really have to stick, mostly your career, the whole career, right? I didn't have a clue at that age what I really wanted to do. if I would just go back to when I was 6 or 7 years old, I always recall that conversation with my family, my parents, and relatives, asking me what you really want to be when you grow up. And I always used to say 5 or 6 things. Yeah, I always used to say, I want to be a football player, I want to be an engineer, a doctor, an astronaut, 5, 6 things. Then always the answer struck me, because you were always pushing me back that that is not real. You really have to stick to one. So just choose one. At age of 6, that was a big shock for me, because I thought I could be, many of these things. But for people who are elder than me, that should have understand more than what I understood, I think it's right. So I had to conform at some point. Um, uh, I was just going around, I met, when I was 10 years old, I met an ambassador, an Egyptian ambassador, that I thought, wow, this guy is brilliant. This guy is amazing. Didn't know enough about life, but I just got impressed by the guy, the way he talks, the way he walks, the way, the way he speaks. And I thought, wow, what this guy's doing, and I would love to be like him. I had that in the back of my mind, and life, moved on. I looked at engineering at some point, and I thought maybe I'm good at math. Okay, engineering is something. My parents wanted me to be a physician, so I looked at it for a while. So I looked at biology, and at some point when I had to decide, I found that the most enjoyable subject for me was chemistry.
Oh.
I enjoyed chemistry so much at that age, and I say I don't have to decide, 6 years back or 10 years ago. I have to decide for today, and today I love chemistry. It wasn't an easy decision, but I tried to make it easy for me. And the easiest way is like, look at what you're enjoying right now and just do it. I remember I had a conversation with my father, and I told him, well, I wanted to be a diplomat maybe 6 years ago, but now I'm enjoying chemistry so much. And I did my homework, and I found that all types of chemistry are only in pharmacy, because they have pharmaceutical chemistry, right, beyond the rest. And I remember the conversation was going back and forth, and I said, yeah, but you wanted to be a diplomat, and I also wanted you to be a physician or a doctor. And I told him, I cannot decide for my future, but what I can do right now is to be a pharmacist. I enjoyed 5 years of pharmacy and chemistry. It wasn't easy at all. I definitely learned a lot of things, but I think it was one of the most difficult studies, especially pharmaceutical chemistry, and I'm sure you know much about it. But I forgot about my dream, my old dream to be a diplomat, or so I forgot about it for all my study. I came back to, right before graduation, the last semester, and I started recalling back that dream. I'm graduating very soon, and I don't think I would be a pharmacist for long. So what's next? It was very hard conversation, because you're just graduating, and then at the same time, you're telling everybody around you, or at least inside yourself, you're thinking that you're leaving this. This is not for you. Graduated, I spent almost a year while working as a pharmacist, reflecting on my decision. I really wanted to make sure that this is the right decision for me. It's not only thinking practically and deciding, practically, but always I believe in spirituality, and I believe when you are at your, let's say, highest levels of spirituality, you can decide better, because you are better informed. You have more connection with the universe, with God, and I decided that I will take my decision like Ramadan, when Ramadan is coming, because Ramadan is for us is the fasting month. And while you're fasting, you're more spiritual. Your stomach is mostly empty. You're more focused. You spend more time in praying at night, and in precious, times in the night. And I thought I would wait until that moment, and then by the end of Ramadan, I would decide. I made my decision. Like, I'm doing this. I will kill myself for it. I will go out to the world and speak to people and say, this is my dream. And then it was so tough, because 99% of people around me were saying, you are stupid, you're wasting your time, you will never be able to do it. I had to take all of this, but the preparation phase prepared me for all of this. The reflection that I made, I was sure this is what I really want to do. I tried to connect it to a life purpose, if I would say. I'm still young, but was trying always to find meaning in whatever I was doing. And I thought, if you're stuck in pharmacy for a while, then make it meaningful. And maybe if I don't like it, even I would say relieving pains in people, I think was at least a temporary, life purpose or meaning. So while doing so, I thought that diplomacy is the lifestyle that I want to live. Diplomacy is the career I want to have. I would have more freedom in traveling. I would work for my country. I would represent my country. I would have a higher impact on representing my culture in the best possible way. And always the idea of cross-culture connection, cross-cultural representation was part of me. So I was so interested to know more about other cultures, learn about other languages. And also, I saw a lot of interesting things in my culture and a lot of wisdom. And I wanted to share that as well, because we can learn from each other if you're open, right? So I connected that dream to be a diplomat to that life purpose. And that's actually what made me so strong. Like when somebody comes to me and they say, come on, you're wasting your time. There are 2,000 people competing for that competition, and it only happens once every 2 years. You are a pharmacist, while hundreds of other people are much more capable than you. Do you think they'll take you and leave all those guys? I go back home, I sit with myself when I study. I always think in that conversation. I always think in the same wording that they used to tell me. I repeat the same thing to me and I say, do you think they're going to take you pharmacist and leave all these guys? And then I reframe the question. I ask another question and I say, do you think it's impossible for God? And in the same moment, I answer back and I say, of course, no, it's impossible. Of course, it's possible for him. Then I come back to me and I say, if it's possible for him, then you just focus on your part. Just do your part. And that's what kept motivating me every single day. I would come back to the same conversation and I would rephrase the question again. I would ask myself the same question. And then I come back to the same conclusion every day. And I say to myself, okay, keep focusing on your part. Keep doing your part. Do your best until the last moment. It was a long process. I took almost 3.5 years since graduation until I joined the foreign service.
Right.
I failed in the middle. So what happened is you have 11 exams in 5 consecutive days. I made it until the end, but I failed in economics. And then you can see people are questioning you again and are looking at you like, you failed. We told you will never be able to do it. And that again was a difficult moment, was a very dark moment for me because it seems that these people are right. And then with a bit of support, like maybe my parents were supportive at that until that moment. And then they started questioning again, like, yeah, but I think you're wasting your time. You would rather just work in a multinational company as a pharmacist and forget about this. I took a month to decide back. I allow myself to receive feedback from, even the negative feedback and try to filter what is the constructive one from, the destructive. I listen to my heart again. I focus again on my heart because I did all the preparatory work that I mentioned to you. And after a month, after another period of prayer, I confirmed again that this is my dream and I have to give myself another chance. And I decided that this time I will not give like 0.01% to chance, and I would even write my own script. So I decided to write my own script for every single imaginary question that I would imagine. Think of global affairs, think of global economy, think of international law, think of international organization. So I started every single day. I would focus on 3 subjects and I would write my own essay. would just write my own script for each one of them. Luckily enough, I went through the process. I passed the first phase, and then the second, and then until the last one. And was a great day when I received the official letter sent by the foreign minister of Egypt that I got accepted. I got appointed as a diplomat. It's a very, very big day. Still a moment of pride that I still recall whenever I'm in hardship, to prove to myself that you had nothing with you. You had almost no one with you in the darkest moment, but you had God supported you. You had yourself, you had your belief in yourself, your faith in yourself, and you did your best. And you went through all of this. So, yeah.
Wow. You know, in reading Time to Move On, which I have on my Kindle, and this is on Amazon. We'll talk about that. But I pulled a few things out early on, and I got a kick out of it. Hold on to your dreams.
Yes.
I pulled that out of
Yes.
there. Don't give
Yes.
up. I pulled that out
Yes.
of there. And then you
Yes.
make reference to Rocky, you know, the movie.
Yes.
Rocky.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I mean, just so even the introduction pulls you in and makes you identify. So some of your highlights, some of your highlights. I know I guess landing in Beijing and working for the Egyptian embassy in Beijing is a major highlight, and you actually learned Chinese, right?
Yes. 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 Thanks, Calvin. So yeah, diplomacy is one of the most interesting jobs anyone could have. I enjoyed it so much. You know, you see the impact of a lot of work that you're doing. You're always representing your country's your country in other countries. You're trying to bridge gaps. You're trying to work things for your favor. So I work in Malawi. My first career, my first posting, I was 25 years old, and I was in Malawi. It was a very interesting 2 years in Malawi because in normally in Africa we have small embassies there. So small embassy means ambassador, another diplomat, and a staff of 25 staff, you know, working on different things. So as somebody who's starting his career or her career when you are 25 years old, and you have to be in charge of all of this because the ambassador will be just on the top, and you have to be the one who do the work for all this. You are the one who's leading the team of 25 people. I learn a lot. I really learn a lot. You do a variety of work. You cover political relationship, you cover economic, commercial, you do consular work, visa, you do everything almost, you know. You go out and meet officials, and also because you are the second diplomat, you are the chargé d'affaires. And the chargé d'affaires, it's a French word where you are the one always in charge when the ambassador is not there. So I'm the second one in the embassy when the ambassador is on leave. I'm the one who's in charge. It's so interesting because you get to meet I met the president of Malawi, for example. Very interesting when you are young. So you learn so fast. You go and meet the foreign minister while you're still 25 years old. So I claim I really learned a lot. I really enjoyed that period. On the other side, I had my own sufferings because there are a bit of other suffering. I had also a car accident, so my car overturned 5 times. I thought at that moment that it's done. Like I was inside, it's roller coaster. I cannot see anything, and I thought, okay, this is my last moment. Hopefully, you know, wherever I'm going, it's a good life, and I'm done, and that's it. I had a lot of suffering after that, but then once I realized that I'm still alive, I thought this suffering is happening for a reason, and it happened, and it continued for a while, whether physically, emotionally. It took quite some time with me. But then after that, I moved to back home, and then I moved to New York, and New York was on and off short periods. Also, that's another great experience, because working in the United Nations, it's a different level. It's a multilateral level. So you get to see a whole new level of conversations, of relationship. Also, always negotiating deals with, you know, a room filled with other countries. Always learning, you know, how to lobby with other countries. So I really learn a lot. And there's always a saying inside the UN courts saying that 1 day in the UN equals 6 months anywhere else, which I think somehow true. Yeah, I get to enjoy a lot of very high level. We're still young, but I got to enjoy very, very high level learning opportunities. Was a lot of pressure, but I learned a lot from that. It happened that I was in charge back home in charge of China and East Asia, including Japan, Korea. So I get to learn a lot about East Asia and relationship with East Asia. And luckily enough, I got the opportunity to go to study Mandarin, to go to study Chinese language in Beijing. Even if it's something that I never thought of, but you feel like sometimes destiny is preparing you for something. And I recall a conversation with somebody who was in China before coming back home. And the lady told me, don't you think that you are in charge of China. Why not you learn Chinese? And I say, I don't think. I tried 5-6 years ago before being a diplomat and I failed. So I don't think it's for me. And then I got an invitation from a friend in China. Then I went there for a week and I thought, wow, this is super impressive. And I see the characters, Chinese characters everywhere in the streets. And I thought, wow, I think I want to study Chinese. Miraculously enough, I found myself a couple of months later in China studying Mandarin. It was very interesting experience. I had to fully immerse myself in a new culture and learn as much as I could, which is also a culture that has a civilization, and there are a lot of history that you can learn from, a lot of wisdom also you can learn from. Luckily enough, because I knew that I don't have enough time, I have less than a year, 8 months, to learn Mandarin very, very fluently and speak without any foreign accent, which luckily happened after 4 or 5 months. Back home for a couple of months, again back in charge of China, and then back to China again. And in China was a very unique experience because also bilateral with China, and I claim any bilateral with China, no matter which country you represent, is also an important bilateral. So you get to learn a lot in terms of work on economics, on mutual projects, on politics. There's a lot to learn. So I enjoyed so much that period. The last 3 years in the embassy, while I was in charge of bilateral relation, I found a small opportunity approaching me, which is to be the focal point of Chinese infrastructure projects in Egypt, while others were pushing it back because it's another full-time job, like beside your job, so no one will pay you extra for this work. I took it as an opportunity to learn. I said, wow, this is interesting. I knew nothing about projects. I don't have finance background. I don't have engineering background. So why not? So 3 years while I'm doing my work on the political side, on the economic side, on the cultural side, I did that work. And this is what prepared me for my next opportunity, which is banking. And of course, we can come to this.
That was my next question. So you're doing all this, and then, boom, you decide to become an investment banker. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it is, sometimes, because also I cannot claim that I was always planning every single step, right? And it's hard to plan, but I can claim that if you have some of those virtues in your personalities, or good traits, I think life will give you back. And I would argue, if you work so hard on what you're doing, if you work with intention, I claimed at many opportunities, I was like, while I see other people are just taking an opportunity, stealing something from somebody, getting a job from somebody. I was doing my work, and I was looking outside and say, if no one will see that impact, at least I'm happy and grateful that I'm doing this with good intention. Also, as a Muslim, we believe that, if you do a good work, God sees you. And we always, there is a verse in the Quran that, actually, sorry, it's a hadith by Prophet, that God loves when you do something, you do your best at it. So he loves seeing you doing your best. And I always had that in my mind, like, do your best, no matter there's somebody seeing that or not. And seeing from that perspective, I really was looking for something new. I figured out that I reached the peak of my career, but then also I was doing always my best in every single job I was doing, and that's what prepared me for the next step. The next step to be in banking wasn't an easy one. Many miracles had to work out, which, by the way, can work out for any person. If you just clear your intention, you do your best, the universe works out its magic all the time, right?
Yeah.
And somehow I find myself in the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, in the investment department, and a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity started again. Yeah.
Wow. By the way, in my monologue, I said our synchronicities, the pharmacist, and my character in my novel. There's one more. You rolled over 5 times in the car. I rolled over 6.
Oh.
6 times in a Volkswagen in 1974. And as my car, it's a long story. I was driving really fast and the car hit me and I lost control, so it started to roll over 6 times. And I write about that in my second novel. It was very spiritual. And I closed my eyes and I was waiting to die. Just like very spiritual moment, because I went between a tree and a pole, and I knew somebody up there had took over the steering wheel and got me through. And the car was completely crushed. There was nothing left of it. And I climbed out the top, and there wasn't a scratch on me. Nothing. So very spiritual. Anyway, just to go off topic for a second, and then we'll jump back in. And I always like to ask this question. You can answer it. You don't have to answer it. It's a one word. So Mustafa, excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with.
Oh, wow, that's a great question.
It is an interesting question. You can answer a few people. There's no rules here.
Well, I think Sylvester Stallone is on the top of the list, for many reasons, including his movie Rocky, which I also wrote about it in the intro of the book.
Right.
And I would love to tell him how he was my childhood hero. I was 5-6 years old kid, and I remember that famous scene where he was running in the streets of Philadelphia and kids are running after him. I was always imagining myself one of these kids, running after him. I didn't have much understanding of things, but seeing him falling down and with the background, music where he just fall down, he tried to get back and get up and fight again. I saw something in this, and somehow this fueled my grit to fight all the time and never give up.
That's a great answer. Great answer. Okay. Along the way, I did read you were able to orchestrate 1.1 billion investment dollars heading, is it to agriculture in the Middle East? Is that what it was for?
Yes, to do several infrastructure projects in Egypt and the Middle East.
Okay.
And it's something I'm really proud of, because one of the intention to work in that place, because I learned a lot about investment, about infrastructure projects while I was at the embassy, and had a lot of dreams. And I saw this as an opportunity to bring that bank somewhere from East Asia all the way to the Middle East, to a region that in the first year of operation, no one in the investment department had a knowledge or understanding or, you know, or even interest about it, because it was still starting in the beginning, and they were looking at, you know, South Asia, Southeast Asia, countries like India, Indonesia. And I saw the opportunity there in the new region, and I was coming from that region. I was until you know, I think the first 3 years or so, I was the only Arab, African, Egyptian in the bank. So I had to represent that region in many ways. And luckily enough, we started with one project, challenges, no, yes, and no, and then it was a solar panel, and it's until recently was the biggest solar panel in the world in the south of Egypt. So turning the Sahara and the desert of Aswan into, you know, was something. It's still the moment when the project got approved by the board. Still a very glorious moment for me, because with all the difficulties, all the challenges, and it looked almost impossible. You see that day happening, and that this is what encouraged me to also, because I was in charge of business development, so I go out, scan projects in every country I travel to. I learn this fast. Like if I need to go, let's say for example, I go to Latin America, and I had only 2 days in Peru, and then 3 days in Argentina, and 4 days in Chile. I have to get the project. I have to scan the project. I have to get the right project. We call it bankable project, feasible project. So it was a skill that I learned quickly, and I had to learn quickly, because if you do the right work in a very short time frame, then that project is bankable. Then you definitely gonna invest in.
Oof. And along the way, I mean, it's so amazing. You managed to get an MBA.
Yes, that was a very difficult moment, very difficult decision, because in the beginning I was at the bank for 6 months, was secondment, and I thought at some point, I think if I meant to be in this place, I should be here for a bit longer than this, and I should have more impact. And it was an opportunity for me to show what I really could do. 6 months is not enough to prove yourself, especially that you are coming out from another industry. But luckily, thanks God, I proved myself to, you know, what kind of value I could bring. And the moment I got appointed as a bank staff, 100%, I decided to do my MBA. And I thought at that moment, I was doing the MBA because I don't have finance background. It's essential to do the MBA to grow more in your career, to learn more about finance, you know, and several other skills to help you in that career. That challenge was that it's a full-time job. Mostly I was working from 9 to 9. And then you have another full-time study. So 9 to 9 back home, eat something very quickly. And then from 10 p.m., you have to read, write assignments, work until maybe 1 a.m. So every single day, I try to discipline myself. Every day I do this 3 hours, 4 hours every day. Weekend, I take my stuff, my books. If I don't have work, I go somewhere, coffee shop or so. I sit there, breakfast once they open until, you know, they ask me to leave. And I did this for 2 years. While you have, on average, once a month mission for the bank. So I used to cover the whole map. So we traveled from China, everywhere in Asia, Middle East, Africa, Europe, and Latin America, plus 1 more week for MBA. So you have to be physically present in the centers of Manchester around the world, whether in Manchester or in Hong Kong or different other places. So it really required a lot of discipline. And I just recall one of those like tough moments where Okay, I'm flying overnight, 12 hours, going somewhere for a mission with the bank, and I would spend there a week, and I don't have enough time to write my assignment. So what I would do is bring all the books, plan that, bring all the books with me overnight. Instead of sleeping, I would just write the assignment. Once I arrive back home, I get to the hotel, I send the assignment, I submit it, I forget about it, and then I move on. So I did that several times, I had to make use of every moment or hour I had.
Wow. Wow. And why I said in my monologue, this could be a movie. So all of this in your life, and then all of a sudden in 2020, you decide you want to become a coach and a writer and to guide people. So in 2020, you started your coaching company, Passion MBA, and along the way, you write. Like I said, I'm reading this. I have it on Kindle. Time to move on. I said it in my monologue. I'm saying it again. If I would have had this in you 25 years ago, you would have saved me so much of my life, because it would, what you say is so critically essential. And the problem with so many of us don't pay attention to this stuff. We get stuck in jobs, but you've got a blueprint. So let's talk about time to move on. And there are 7 career myths, if you want to just briefly.
Sure.
I mean, by the way, it's on Kindle, and I said to you also, Mustafa, kids in college should read this.
Yes.
By the way, this is not only limited. It's not only limited to mid-career, midlife stuff. And by the way, senior citizens should read it too, because maybe it'll help them channel some of the energies like me.
Exactly.
So what are in time to move on? What are some of the career myths?
Well, the stories of those myths is somehow I learned it the hard way in my career transitions, and I used to believe in all these myths, and were like red lines for me. You never dare to think of or cross. And one of them is the supreme specialist, I would say. So mostly we learn school, education, our parents, people around us, is the only way to succeed in life is to stick to one specialization, excel in that career, get promoted, stay there until the last day of your life. Don't think of change, because change, you will endanger all what you built. While I still believe that there is a truth behind this. Specialization is important, and it's beneficial, and especially in many industries. I learned the hard way after having different careers, different experiences, different domains that I have expertise in. I could see the value, by changing, by pivoting, by transforming your life, because at the end of the day, it's about the journey that you have. And if I just go back and have to pick one of these careers, and I would just stick to one, whether a pharmacist or a diplomat or a banker, I would choose all the above, because the value that you're building in yourself, the impact that you're having on people around you because of your expertise in different places, the magic that you can do by just connecting the dots, it's magical. And unfortunately, no one will able to see this unless they do this. So bring a specialist in one tiny specialization and ask him or her to see that value. They will never see this, because life for them is seen from that perspective, right? But unless you start going out and see the world from another perspective, and then complement the picture, and then go out somewhere and then bring things together, you wouldn't be able to see so. I just give an example. Freeman Dyson is back in the 40s and 50s is an American mathematician. He wrote about this, and he compared a specialist versus a generalist. A specialist is like frog. Frogs know every single tiny detail down in the mud. They can see flowers in a very focused way, but they cannot see beyond that. While generalist or somebody who has different experience is like birds. Birds are up there above trees. They can see horizons. They can connect horizons. No one is better than the other. Both are important for you or for your team. So I had to, first of all, learn in my life how to bust this myth, and then I wrote about it. So it's the whole chapter is full of research. It discussed the economic trends that we have been through, as we mentioned earlier, the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, and many others, where people are quitting their jobs willingly without alternatives, staying at home. And when I look behind this, I've been watching this trend for 3.5 years or so. I could argue that the root cause of this is that people are coming back to their human nature. Okay, and human nature is not specialization, if I would say. If we just go back to every single civilization in history, I did that exercise. I went back to old Egypt. I went to the Greek time, Roman time, the Renaissance man in a woman in Europe, back in China, back in India. They were all mainly characterized by the big number of generalists, or they used to call them polymath, somebody who has in-depth experience across different domains. Without those people who are able to mind the gaps and bridge the gaps between different domains, you wouldn't see new knowledge, you wouldn't see new science. For example, at some point, chemistry and biology were completely separate. And then at some point, there's somebody came who was able to bridge both and bring both together. Biochemistry, right? Anatomy. You can have that example all the time. So, for example, that was one of the myths that I spoke about in the book. Another example, it's too late to change. And I have seen this a lot with people claiming at whatever age they are, they say, oh, I wish if I could. It's too late. And I had to jump to the psychology of this, because it's not about the age, it's about the attitude and the mindset. So I compared, I brought two stories. One story of 16 years old boy that he used to work with me when I was a pharmacist, who left school. And when I was convincing him to go back to school, he would say, I'm too old for this. And then a 68 years old man that I met in the MBA in Manchester, and I saw him doing an MBA, and I saw him in the workshop with us, and we are mostly much younger than him. And when I asked the other guy, I told him, look, like, Dave, why are you doing this? Like, it's, and at that time, I never had the idea of the book, but it stuck with me. And he say, I'm an accountant in a school, and I would love to expand my responsibility and my roles. And also I'm thinking and I'm exploring a career change. So I decided to do an MBA. So it's like, wow, that's impressive. So it's about the mindset. Like, you never know. If you want to change, just start now, right? At least you wouldn't feel, the feeling of regret that you wanted to do something but you never tried. At least you tried, right? That's another myth. I would maybe mention a third one. Somebody who leaves a 15 years old experience in a career, has skills, and he would say, this is a sunk cost. I left that place and I'm starting from scratch. And I would argue that nothing is a sunk cost. You will leave to the new career with all your skills. You just need to learn how to transfer your skills with you. I just give an example. For example, I studied chemistry in school and university. And at some point, I thought when I moved to diplomacy that this is a sunk cost, that this is not useful for me anyway. Until I went to China and started studying Chinese. and it was so easy for me to read and write Chinese. And I was like, wow, why? Yeah, like really, I couldn't get it. So until like many years later, when I understood more about analogical thinking and the idea, or analogical reasoning, the idea of having an analogy somewhere else in another expertise, another domain, and then bringing that analogy somewhere and then building a similar logic to learn the skill quickly or to solve a problem quickly, it's magic. And what happened is chemistry helped me to learn Chinese quickly.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow.
I will just give you, the logic, because organic chemistry, I'm
Yes.
sure you know the benzene ring. There is a logic when you draw the benzene ring. So you always start from left to right, from up to down. Always endings in benzene ring means something. It means whether it's an effect, whether if it's a drug or in pharmacy, it means something. While in Chinese, it's pretty much the same logic. So you draw from left to right, from up to down. Endings mean something, whether it's a meaning in a word or a pronunciation, it's a way to pronounce. So your skills, your expertise will continue always with you.
Wow. You know, it's interesting because um, often in my life, in my journalism, in my teaching, my spending 6 years in pharmacy school and practicing for 12, but I always say that education,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that pharmacy education was so broad,
Yes.
it made
Yes.
you think. It made
Yes.
you
Yes.
think, and there was some,
Yes.
the organic I mean, all of that.
Yes.
I always refer back to what I'm doing now. What
Yeah.
really enabled me and helped me was the
Exactly.
pharmacy education, because it
Exactly.
made you think.
Exactly.
It was a tough curriculum. Someday, not now, I'll tell you how I got some of that stuff. But anyway, so time to move on, which I urge people to read it, to because it can save decades of your life. And
Yeah.
I live it every day, and that's why this means so much to me. You mean so much to me.
Thank you.
So you have started Passion MBA, which is a consulting service. You
Yes.
guide people,
Yes.
and I know there was one thing I read. Somebody was going to change and make a career change. It would have taken 13 months, but
Yes.
they went through you, and it took 3 or 4 months. So
Yes.
talk a little bit about Passion MBA, what you do.
Sure. Sure. Like when I started my coaching business and I decided to jump into career coaching, um, I, I thought I'm doing this for a big reason. I'm leaving the corporate job or life behind me for a bigger reason, which hopefully to help people to live their life by these values and transform their life. So um, starting and also, coaching in general has been trending for a while. So there are a lot of competition out there. So I thought the only way to uh, be unique in this market is to build what you're preaching or teaching on your practical experience. And definitely learning the hard way, going through all the challenges, adversities, how to overcome your fear, how to overcome several things were so important. Um, I had to build a methodology, and the methodology came from every single career transition in my experience. So I went back to like when I was a pharmacist and I wanted to move to a diploma. What did I do? So I just recall and wrote and did a bit of journaling. Went back to my old journaling. What did I do? And I went to the second transition. I did the same, and then the third, and then I built a methodology. And the methodology is very, very practical one because it's so crucial before you decide to leave to have a bit of orientation because just jumping in the ocean and just getting the first opportunity in front of you is really not helpful, because it's a hard process. You will question yourself a lot. People will question you, unless, as I mentioned earlier, unless you spend a bit of time of understanding yourself, reflection, and orientation. It's really hard to go out and fight for your dream. So I thought, if on average people take 12 to 13 months, and in other cases it would take even 2 to 3 years, there must be a way to reduce that time frame to something shorter. So when I built that methodology, I incorporated the orientation in the beginning. I tried it on friends and family members who really seek for that. They found it so useful. And then I went out and applied on other people. And the promise was always, instead of 13 months, we're going to make it in 4 to 6 weeks.
Right.
A month or a month and a half.
Right.
And that was always the case, because it's like it goes both ways. So even if I take 50% responsibility, the mentee would take another 50% responsibility. So it's a weekly conversation, weekly exercise, weekly follow-up, a bit of journaling, a bit of different exercise to be frank with yourself, to talk to yourself, even starting with writing a letter to yourself. Appreciate things about yourself, talk about your successes, talk about several things in your life. And then it warms you up to open up and be frank with yourself. And then I moved to another interesting exercise. Then the name is not really interesting, because I call it the dying bed exercise, where people imagine that they are at a stage they don't have any more in this life. What they achieve is achieved, and they look back and try to assess, okay, what sorts of achievement I had in my life, what did I do, what I didn't do, what I dreamed but I couldn't achieve, and why, and what are your major regrets, and then imagine if you can go back, what would you change? And I see this exercise as very powerful, because it really helps people to create a sort of urgency. Because if you just want to change and like there is no sort of urgency, it's not really easy to change. But if both of us have been through that critical moment where we were almost at the last moment in our life, we understood that it's done, and we got another chance. And I'm sure we both of us appreciate, the rest. Like I always say, I had the accident on November 2008, and I still say every single day after that date is another opportunity for me. So I just should take chance of that. So I help people to create urgency, and then we go to the real orientation phase, where I help them to know more about their passions, more about their values, and imagine and visualize an ideal lifestyle for them. The moment they have those circles intersecting somewhere in the middle, this is where you want to act, in the coming month. So generally, this process would take 4 to 6 weeks. After that, you really know where are you heading. I applied this on different people, and the surprise was always a very drastic change. As you mentioned, like somebody had been always in the legal, world,
Yes. Yes.
moved inside a lot from, being a judge to, corporate to, criminal law, different things. And the process showed something completely different, that having or creating an agribusiness, which is super interesting, at the same time, it's very convincing. It's surprising, but convincing. So when we revealed those information, when we came to the moment where, okay, this is what we have, we had two paths. The first one is to create, I would say, a recruiting agency in the legal world. And it's very practical because he has the experience in that world, so connections as well. But then the other one was, it's an agribusiness. It's connecting two sides in that sphere and when you try to justify that, it goes back to every single step of these processes. So he himself was like, wow, yeah, it makes sense to me. I asked him to pursue both for a couple of weeks just to test himself. And somehow I knew where he would be heading, because more passion toward that and many other things. And was very organic and natural seeing him just pursuing the agribusiness.
Great, great success story. One thing I forgot to mention, in time to move on, you did work with Jack Canfield.
Yes.
He's an amazingly successful.
Luckily enough, been so lucky to work with Jack Canfield. He's a guru in his field. He's somebody that you can learn really a lot from him in many different things. The experience that he have, the wisdom that distill, the willingness to learn all the time. Like I got shocked when he was always talking about that, how many mentors he had. Like at this experience, at this level, at this age, he's still learning from other people. So I started the journey as many others, looking online. And at that moment, I was still in the bank. And I was looking for, what if I want to write a book? And I really wanted to write a book. And I just look online. I think if I wanted to write a book, it has to be a best-selling. Why? Because I think the values that you can instill in the book could change people's life. So if I write an average book, it will not change people's life. But if I learn how to write a good book with the values that I live my life in, I think it would help a lot of people. So I learned a lot from Jack and many other people, and then slowly, getting closer. We attended several seminars together. I did also his certification, the Success Principles, which is super interesting. You get to learn a lot of things about coaching, the success principles. Also, I merge a lot of those success principles in career coaching at some point. Like I would argue how to use the power of visualization, to imagine your dream career, the power of affirmation, because also affirmation is a key. When you know where are you heading and just use that power of affirmation every single day, it's a superpower. Also, luckily, Jack wrote the foreword of Time to Move On, so it's really a pleasure having Jack writing this. It means a lot to me. It means that this book is up to the level and the expectations that somebody like Jack Canfield put his name on. Right. And right now, even Jack Canfield has a very interesting 6-month program called Game Changer. I'm also lucky to be chosen as one of a few coaches who work with Jack, with a big pool of mentees and people who want to change their lives in many different ways.
Wow. So what a journey. I mean, really, what a journey. I identify so much with it because I've done my changes. I'm just thrilled with this opportunity. There's one more aspect of you, Mustafa, that really moves me, and it's your dream and what you do is you want to work with orphans.
It's somehow it's a dream since my childhood. It maybe part of it came from my spiritual life, my religious life, because it's a belief. It's one of the sayings also of our prophet in Islam, that whoever takes care of orphans will be with us as prophets in the paradise in the next life. So which means it's the highest level, it's the highest rewards. And I was always giving to that cause from my pocket money since I was 15 years old or so. The surprise to me was, the more I give, the more life gives me back. The more I give, the more life gave me back.
Correct.
And I was like, I reached to the conclusion that your money, doesn't get less when you give to the just charity. It's the opposite. you get, I would say, you get more blessing in whatever you're doing. I have seen this also in my diplomacy, my banking career. The more I give much more than I used to do, and then life gave me back. When I started my recent coaching business, I thought that there is no ceiling for that dream, to grow. And I thought, like, while you're teaching and coaching people to change their life, there must be a way to also teach orphans between the age of 12 to 18 to dream about their life. And the reason I look at that age is that it's a very critical age. It's where a lot of consciousness is built up. While if they have a chance and access for education, I still see that's a very traditional education. There are a lot of things are missing in this. If you don't have parents around you taking care of you, it's really hard to dream about your life. It's really hard to, dream that you can do anything you want. So also applying mostly all the methodologies and all the things I'm teaching and coaching peoples around, I think it applies also to that age. It applies also to orphans. So my big dream is hopefully by 2030 to have 1 million orphans dreaming about their lives, applying those dreams, achieving those dreams. And hopefully, even if some of them want to have their own startups or, their companies, I want to create a startup incubator for them. So, giving them the full involvement in building a startup, giving them the access to investment and, venture capital. And if I would be able to achieve this dream, I think, for me, I'm super delightful and fulfilled.
We spoke last week. I didn't realize it, but I was quoting the Quran when I said I've lived by this and I've heard it, and I never knew where it came from. But and it relates a little bit to your work with orphans. But he or she who saves a life saves the world.
Yes.
So, and that's a great way to finish this amazing by the way, real fast, I always like to ask this too, some of your favorite movies, just to kind of lighten things up because it's heavy.
Sure. Like this is a great question. I love it. And I mean, if I would mention 2 or 3, I go back again to Rocky for the same reason I mentioned.
Sure.
It's one of my favorite ever. It's there are several scenes that I mostly keep watching almost on a daily basis or a weekly basis because it motivates me. The second is Sleepless in Seattle.
Love
it's
it.
a movie by Tom Hanks.
Love it.
Yeah, it's a great movie because even if it looks as a very simple movie, easy, but it has a lot of messages. It's a genius movie for me. A lot of messages inside, a lot of signs. They talk about the sign, and when destiny take you to your destiny.
Correct.
Even if the whole world is against you, you will get to wherever you're destined to have. So I have that always, in my life. And also when I want to see some signs, I watch the movie again and again just to see it. And if I could say the third is The Pursuit of Happiness, and it's also a true story. And of course, they know the story of Chris Gardner. Is this somebody who was almost homeless, single father, and he was killing himself to get the opportunity to win that one internship, after 6 months of living in the street and working hard. So whenever I see difficulty in life, I go back to that story, whether to watch the movie or watch a scene of it, and remember, like you will never been in a situation like this guy who was homeless, was taking care of his family, and he killed himself to, and he never lost hope. So you would never lose hope for yourself or people around you.
I'm a Casablanca man myself, but
Yes, yeah.
anyway,
That's
I
also a
wrote my
great
first
movie.
novel because I watched Casablanca, and that inspired me to write my first novel. Anyway,
So,
we've done some great stuff here. You are honestly amazing, and I'll say for the third or fourth time, I wish I would have known you 20 or 25 years ago. You would have guided me to do the things that I stumbled upon 25 years later. So you're just amazing.
thank you.
I'm inviting you to come back and
Thank you,
talk
Calvin.
more.
Thank you.
I will always be
Thank you,
the
Calvin.
spokesperson for you because I've lived
Thank you.
not knowing what
Thank
I was living
Yes.
everything you're
Yes.
talking about. I've kind of lived. So I'm all yours. I'm
Thank you.
thrilled, Mustafa, to have met
Thank you so much, really, Calvin. I'm very grateful for the first of all the opportunity to meet you, because with very specific people, you feel that you were destined to meet
Yeah, yes,
at some point. You feel that somehow we met somewhere
yeah,
before, and the connection happened. So
I
when
believe
we
that.
just talk or send to each other, there is something, and I'm sure we met for a reason, and the reason is still here for whatever purpose or benefit for both of us, for other people around us. And I think there are a lot of work we can do to help other people, and it's much more enjoyable and entertaining and fulfilling life that we live with a purpose and for a purpose, changing and transforming people's life, and hopefully also orphans' life at some point.
Correct.
Thank you so much.